Hey everybody, this is JDGaming, back today with a brand new concept for the channel. I recently moved in with my partner, and she decided to try out Yu-Gi-Oh! After we watched some GX. We tried some speed duels IRL, master duel, and more recently, the TCG using some of the archetypes I featured in the past that I haven't really updated in quite some time. As I whipped up some quick basic decks to play around with, I figured that even the rough concepts that I come up with could be useful for further refinement either by myself or anyone who happens to be interested in the theme. With that, I bring you the very first simple sample. Literally a simple sample deck list that I've been playing casually at our dining table that can serve as a starting point for an old favorite, World Chalice. Let's jump right into it. Here is a sample deck list. Again, it is just a starting point. You are expected to go ahead and modify this to whatever needs you have. You can add in hand traps, board breakers, whatever tech cards you need in order to address whatever kind of environment you would expect to play in. This is just kind of a max out everything, throw in some synergistic cards and see how it goes. And I'm not going to go as in-depth as I would in a Let's Build or in-depth introduction, but we're still going to go ahead and do the same kind of format. I'll explain why things are in here at least briefly, and hopefully if you find this interesting and you try it out, or you revisit this, maybe you've already tried this before, this will kind of reignite some passion into it, and then as you go and explore things, you'll find a lot of interactions beyond the ones that I talk about. But just to start you off nice and simple here, we're starting off with 3 copies each of the vanilla World Chalice monsters. That's Beckoned, Chosen, and Crowned, all because these vanilla monsters are the easiest ones to use for our main Link 1, Imduk the World Chalice Dragon. This gives you an extra normal summon once per turn of a World Chalice monster, and it shares the same kind of Link extender effect that these World Chalice monsters have, where if it's sent to the graveyard, you can go and summon another World Chalice monster from your hand to continue your plays, and that part is not a once per turn. You have some other effect. I'm not going to use it because I honestly have never used Imduk's effect to big impact or anything other than its normal summon and extension, but you're trying to set up a tribute summon of World Legacy World Chalice because it has 2 effects. The first effect is if it has been tribute summoned and it leaves the field, so you link it off with the monster you extend off of the Imduk, for example, you can go and special summon 2 World Chalice monsters from your deck except a copy of this. That lets you turn it into a Link 2 and then go and bring out 2 more monsters off of this effect, so you can just keep climbing and extending from there, which is fantastic. And then on the next turn's main phase, you can go and cycle this out, banish it in order to search a World Legacy card from deck to hand. That doesn't even exclude itself, so you can grab another copy of itself, or you can grab something like the Monster Reborn, the Counter Trap, this other thing that's a free drop, and this thing that's basically Pot of Greed from your graveyard for just recycling these guys. Gives you some flexibility there, and in order to more consistently access this, we of course have Lee, World Chalice Fairy. This is kind of like a Stratos for the deck. You just search on summon, and then there's kind of this trade out effect where you can take any monster from your field or hand, send it to the grave for cost, and then add Lee back to your hand. That can help fuel your hand using your field, let's say, which normally looks bad, but sometimes you have some discard outlets, and if you want to discard something, you can go ahead and make sure you have something there. So just something to keep in mind. Now, the big spice that I really like in this deck that I have not been able to play with a couple years ago when this deck was profiled is Small World, because it simply didn't exist. But basically, you're able to bridge between any card in your hand, 1 more card in your deck, into another card in your deck, as long as it only shares 1 aspect between its type, attribute, level, attack, or defense. And it just so happens that all these guys literally have different stats, but they share enough aspects that you can go ahead and search between them or search your other cards. So this is a phenomenal card that feels almost like it was made for this deck. And as you'll kind of see when I talk about like the idea board, there's so many different things that you can grab, even beyond the suggestions I have here, that will then let you take this card to further tech out the deck and go for things in directions that I can't even imagine right now. So very, very fun card. Definitely try it out if you haven't used this in World Chalice before. We'll just leave it at that for now. It's small world, but infinite possibilities, honestly. We're going to go with 3 copies of Agent of Creation Venus with the 3 Shine Balls. This is not new to the theme. This is one of the bread and butter concepts of this deck. Normal summon this guy or cheat it out in some way, and then pay 500 life points at a time to summon as many Shine Balls as you want from your hand or deck, which is very, very nice because Shine Ball is a vanilla monster, meaning it can go and do all of the Imduk plays that you would want to do, and you can very very easily access Venus thanks to not only Small World, but you have Transmodify, which can basically turn these level 2 light fairy monsters into a level 3 light fairy monster. So there's already some synergy there. Let's say if you go and summon Lee, you search this World Legacy World Chalice because you didn't have it in hand, you transmodify it into Venus, spawn 3 Shine Balls, one of them turns into Imduk, and then now you contribute any of those guys, and you contribute some of the World Legacy that you just searched off of the Lee. So it just helps tie things together here. In terms of Small World, here's the fun extra synergy that enhances something we had before. So Exodius is awesome in this deck because it's a free extender whose summon requirement, not even an activated effect, shuffles all your monsters in the graveyard back into your deck. So basically, ultimate recycler for everything, and it has like a Foolish Burial effect on attack, but you're really not gonna use it all too much. What matters is that in addition to being a free extender who recycles all your Shine Balls so you can summon them all again with the Venus you have on your field, is the fact that it has 0 defense. Like, we're not even gonna consider the question mark attack. I've seen split rulings and I haven't played around enough with it, like on Master Duel or something, that conclusively tells me that you can do anything with question mark attack. But at the very least, what I do know is that as a 0 defense spellcaster dark monster that's level 10, it actually has a lot of bridging potential within this deck, because let's say you already have one of these two, you can fetch the other one using Small World because these both share 0 defense and nothing else. And oh, wouldn't you know, this has 0 defense, this has 0 defense, this has 0 defense. Yeah, there's some shared aspects, like Chosen actually does have everything pretty much mirrored with Venus. It's a level 3/16/0, which is kind of awkward, but you could still bridge like through Exodius into this, let's say, either way. And then you can even use World Chalice, even though it's dark, it's got 0 defense still, so like you can go turn this into this or this, and then go into Exodius or this. So like there's so many different paths you can take to this, and so it becomes infinitely more likely that you will assemble Venus and Exodius combo for basically 6 free monsters through Shine Ball, compared to a few years back when you had to hard draw this. And we're still playing the Yugioh because that'll help you draw and filter, but this has never been easier than before, and this was one of the big reasons why I wanted to try out this deck. Master Duel Story Mode kind of made me want to get back in on this, kind of gave me that itch, but Small World is what really tied it together and made me be like, yeah, I want to play this deck. Then the rest of the deck is pretty simple. It's just 2 Guard Dragon. This is like a hand trap that blocks targeting on a monster that is linked, which, to clarify, means either a link monster who is pointing at something or any monster that is being pointed to by something. Either way, those cards are linked if they're involved in arrows, and that's pretty solid considering you're going to be doing a lot of linking and you can protect your plays along the way. And then the main reason you play it is this is one very good monster you can cheat out with World Legacy World Chalice, because if this is in your grave, you can banish it and then revive a normal monster to one of your zones that a link monster points to. So this thing becomes 2 monsters. One of them is this, and then you can go and use this from the grave to bring out another monster from your grave. So basically becomes 3 monsters off of your World Legacy World Chalice. Now, big spice here. I like playing 3 copies of Crusadia Arborea in this deck. Not only is it another level 3 monster with different stats, so you can go ahead and use it as a bridge for Small World, but it happens to be a tuner monster, so very searchable level 3 tuner. You bring this out for free anytime you have a link monster pointing into one of your open zones, and that means you can tune it with your level 3 monsters like Venus or Chosen, and then you can go for the level 6 Muddy Mud Dragon, who basically has 2 effects. One, it's a fusion substitute for any specifically named monster, and you can fusion summon using itself and a monster you control. And wouldn't you know, if you're not playing Master Duel, you can use it as a cheated Dark Magician and then combine it with any dragon effect monster, and we have a few of those, like Guard Dragon's a dragon, this thing's a dragon. The other day I used Yugioh in kind of like a backed into the wall scenario where I use that as a dragon. You can cheat out this big behemoth. Yeah, it can't pop any of your opponent's monsters because you didn't use any vanillas, but still untargetable, cannot be destroyed by card effects, and then it has an Omni Negate where you can discard any card from your hand. That's where Lee can be useful, trading field advantage into hand, and if you do negate and destroy something, you gain 1000 attack permanently. So, you know, it's been a while since we've looked at Dragoon, and I've always thought every time you read this card, it feels like there's another new effect, but you're able to use this card pretty effectively in this deck. This would be one of the first things you could consider cutting if you really want to play pure Link build, and then you wouldn't need the Crusadia Arborea. It has the bonus of being like, you know, extra protection on your Avramax. My brother does that in all his decks all the time, but I just really wanted to play between Small World and this interaction with so many free dragons. I was like, I gotta try this out, and so far I'm liking it. It's just silly fun, and yeah, you can decide if you want to play that or not. For the last few cards is basically these 5 cards in this kind of J shape here. This thing is basically another free extender to a zone a link monster points to, and it has an interesting effect where you can just tribute it in order to negate and destroy an extra deck monster who uses its effect. Pretty solid. If you happen to tribute summon it, which pretty much never happens in this deck because you're trying to use even your extra normal summon on this, but you would be able to go and search a World Legacy spell or trap from deck to hand. Lieb is able to do that. It exists. Think about it in case that comes up. The cards that we do want to search are World Legacy's Heart, which basically lets you go and recycle any 2 World Chalice monsters in your grave with different names to your hand. And then if any of your linked monsters, same thing as Guard Dragon, would be destroyed by battle specifically, you can banish this instead. It sometimes comes up. It's a free effect, but basically this thing is so accessible that it's worth considering now. In the past, I would have been like, it's a win more card, but I really do think with Lieb existing, this gives you a lot of ammo. It's worth at least playing around with. This is basically the same effect as Guard Dragon combined with Monster Reborn in that it's any monster in any position to a Zona like monster points to. The other day, I was potentially able to go ahead and just revive Dragoon using this if this thing weren't going to be negated, but still kind of fun there. World Legacy Sorrow says if you have a co-linked monster, so 2 monsters pointing at each other, omni-negate any 1 card, which is very solid because you can just set this directly from the deck or search it to your hand. And then the last card is Herald of Orange Light, which, you know, you have a decent amount of fairies here. This is 9 right here, not counting other things that you could potentially play. It itself is a tuner monster at level 2, so you can combine this with, say, Backend and then just go into Muddy Mud Dragon that way. Gives you a bunch of flexibility. At the very least, I thought it was powerful enough to warrant play. Take it or leave it. At 1 copy, it's not the most consistent thing, but it is kind of fun when you're able to access that. Finishing out the extra deck, we're playing 2 copies of Imduk. It's been a while. I remember way back in the day, some of you guys, my viewers, actually said, play 3 Imduk, there's this combo. I don't know how viable it really is or necessary with the card pool having advanced by like 2 to 3 years, but I still think 2 is fine. Maybe play 3 if there is a combo, but for right now, I didn't miss it. I played 2. 1 Link Spider because this thing, again, takes a normal monster, cheats out a normal monster. It kind of does a similar thing to Imduk. It's also a Cyberse monster, so if you want to play something like Heat Soul, you can actually go ahead and use this as your monster for that. It's also a different attribute from Aurum, who is a Cyberse monster. This thing has a power-up effect of 300 attack for every different World Legacy, not World Chalice monster in your graveyard. That basically restricts you to this guy, kind of limited in what it really does, but you're using it because it is a Link 2 who extends your plays further, because if it hits the grave, it does that summon from your hand. And on top of that, you can use its effect to tribute one of your World Chalice monsters it points to then revive a different monster from your graveyard, and that monster you revive can be anything. So as long as you have like a free guy you extended into, let's say you went and did the summon Imduk, tribute summon into this, bring an extender out, you turn the 2 of those into Aurum, summon one of those monsters at least into the zone Aurum points to, and now you can Monster Reborn anything from your graveyard later in the turn, which could be very bonkers for combos. So, you know, keep in mind, you got this as a Monster Reborn. The combo potential in this deck's very, very high. I've just been freestyling it for fun at the dinner table, but you can go ahead and world's your oyster with this revive. Eve sometimes can come up. It needs 2 monsters with different types and attributes, same link extension ability, and then this linked card does not die by battle or card effects. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and then if another one of your monsters it points to would die by card effects specifically, you can send this to the grave instead, which will then trigger that extension ability, so it's not terrible in the slightest. Its arrows are a little awkward sometimes because it can't be an initial play. Like, you can't just bring this down quite as freely as oh, that's awkward. So as I was saying, you can't exactly bring this out as freely as you could like an extra deck monster that's like Synchro or Fusion, because it would end up in your extra monster zone unless you have someone else. But in this deck, I feel it's super easy to bring this out so that it's appropriately pointing to something else. IP Masquerena, just because you can go for Unicorn as a disruption. Lieb is a bit more core. It takes literally any 2 monsters, could be tokens, vanillas, same names, whatever. You can only summon it while you have a World Legacy card in your grave. That's any card, so it could be this, most likely, could be this, could even be like one of the spell and traps. Once it's played, during your main phase, you can set any one of these beautiful spell or trap cards directly from your deck. Depends on the situation. You either get 2 monsters back to your hand that you can extend with, or 1 monster from your grave of your choice back. And if neither of those is necessary, you can go ahead and just set an Omni Negate, because you'll probably be able to set up a co-link somewhere in your combo. And if you're going second, she does have another effect I want to point out. If she's sent to the graveyard as link material, you could shuffle 1 card on the field into the deck, which is just like Avramax's removal effect. Very strong, able to get around a lot of problematic cards. Ningirsu gives you a draw on summon for however many different World Chalice monsters it's pointing to. to on summon, and it's able to go and send any card on each side of the field to the graveyard. Doesn't target anything, which is pretty nice, and it still has the extension as well. Do note that this card needs 2+ link monsters, and that is why it's extra helpful to have multiple Imduk and even Link Spider in this deck, because you want to have access to an easy Link 1 monster to be able to make this economically. Avramax, absurdly powerful. Read this card, kind of like a Dragoon. It feels like it has a ton of effects, but basically Lightning Rod for attacks, gains attack, so it's always doing 3,000, pretty much avoid targeting. If you summon it with IP Masquerade, it can't be destroyed by card effects either, so you're generally trying to do that, or set up a protection effect with Crusadia Arborea. These two don't really need too much of an explanation, other than you can go ahead and cheat out a ton of monsters to make plays, and you can go ahead and just get rid of every attribute in the deck. Basically, you've got a wind, an earth, a fire, a water, a dark, a light, like you have everything. So you could just go and access Code Talker for your opponent's whole field. Saryuja Skull Dread should be the last card here. It's been a while, unless you play Dark World, you probably haven't seen this in years. Basically, it takes 4 monsters to summon in order to get its effect out. You're not going to summon it for 2. On summon, draw 4, put away 3 cards from your hand to the bottom of the deck in any order. Obviously, drawing 4 is really good because it helps you access these extremely powerful cards so that you can make plays, and its other effect for 3 materials, because it gets all 3 of its effects for some reason. Summon out 1 monster from your hand, that helps you make extensions, and then a trigger effect where that monster is going to gain 300 attack and defense. So if you have a trigger on normal or special summon, you can go ahead and just use your other trigger monster, and then Saryuja, Chainlink 2 on top of that, block from a lot of cards. So very, very powerful. And then on top of that, again, remember, it's a dragon monster, so you can use it to cheese out Red Eye's Dark Dragoon if the situation calls for that as well. Now, that's the main deck. Here are just some ideas. I stopped at 15, but literally you could just keep going on. If you have any cool ideas, feel free to share them down in the comments below. But here are just my thoughts on a few of these. So Girsu is interesting in that it's not really a World Chalice card, but on summon, you can go and send a World Legacy card from deck to grave, which maybe there's some synergy here. Turn this into a tuner if there's already kind of column things set up like it's a Mech Knight card, or more likely, you're just going to summon this, use its effect, spawn a token to each side of the field. That token's a vanilla, so then this one card turns into 2 monsters. You turn the vanilla into Imduk. You contribute either one in order to go and summon this, or otherwise summon another monster. So basically, it's 2 summons in 1. I don't know how really good it is in this build as it is, but I feel like there's got to be potential with this card. So definitely the first thing I wanted to mention there. Next, I want to mention these hand traps. Obviously, again, this is a basic build. You could probably cut like all these down to 2, or some of them down. I don't know. I haven't really played around with the numbers specifically, but there's definitely room for you to cut down on some of these things, and then you'd be able to play staples, board breakers. But I especially like hand traps in this deck because having 0 attack level 3 hand traps or defense hand traps, like you could do effect failures level 1, 0 attack and defense light. All those different aspects are useful for Small World to create new bridges, so definitely keep that in mind. I especially wanted to point out Ghost Ogre because it's a psychic level 3 monster, which means you could play Emergency Teleport to start out your plays, because it happens that Chosen by the World Chalice is also a level 3 psychic monster. And similarly, you can play Unexpected Die to bring out any of these guys, or if you're really feeling spicy, you can go and summon Shine Ball instead, I guess. These guys are very fun because they let you go and cheat out a monster without your normal summon, which means Imduk gives you a true second normal summon on top of all that. Rhoda could be considered if you want to fetch Arborea or Beckend or any other warrior monster you choose to tech in here. All these spells I grouped together because you could use them with Gamma in the deck. This is a level 2 light 0 defense monster, so it's a psychic monster. You could cheat it out with this. You could go and use that for synchro plays, but Gamma is incredible anytime you're using spells. So if you add these things, then it's definitely worth considering because you can have no monsters, Gamma your opponent's response, and now you get 2 free monsters, including a vanilla, mind you. But you could also go and use it if you start off with Small World. You can use it if you play Transmodify and you tribute your only monster. You're left with no monsters, so if they Ash Blossom you, you just Gamma them and then you just get 2 guys for free. So this is definitely my first pick for a hand trap, other than the generic stat line, manipulation of these guys with Small World. It still interacts with Small World, which is fantastic. So definitely worth considering. That 0 defense really does come in clutch with all of these monsters here. This monster here, not crowned. World Chalice Guard Dragon Almarduke. Tribute 3 Link monsters in order to summon this thing, so it's pretty decent. 3,000 attack. It can attack all your opponent's monsters, and if it attacks a Link monster, you can banish 1 monster from your grave with the same Link rating in order to destroy your opponent's guy for free and burn them equal to that monster's original attack. It can be played, honestly. So there's room in this extra deck. If you don't want to play these 2, you could play this. Maybe you could do some weird thing with like super poly if there's an environment where there's tons of link monsters. I don't know. It's very solid. It's very easy to bring out. And remember, if you go ahead and get rid of your link monsters in the World Chalice archetype, they're all just going to extend another card anyway, or take away one of your opponent's cards. So Tri-Gate Wizard I had in this extra deck because I'm waiting on the Maze of Memories reprint on Mech Knight. But basically, I don't think it's good anymore, honestly, because the card pool has just evolved so much. It's difficult to warrant playing around this guy for one Omni Negate. It's very good. It banishes a card, but I'd rather go and do dumb stuff like summon out Muddy Mud Dragon for a cheesed out Dragoon, or, you know, just summon out Apollosa or do some other things. It's playable. I don't know if it's worth playing. It does require you to play a very particular way to co-link everything. So like you may want to consider like Nightmare Phoenix or something, which isn't bad. It helps protect all your guys from battle destruction if you co-link it. I don't know. I just don't especially like this card. It also gives proactive removal at 2, which is a little more achievable, but even then, like you could just go Leeb or Unicorn. You don't need Tri-Gate Wizard. And oh yeah, there's also Ningirsu as well. So lots of removal options. I think this is an antiquated card, but you know, I'd like to hear your thoughts if you've played around with it in modern times and you find it's still playable. These guys are in here just because I consider, you know, they're pretty cool new Cybers monsters. Heat Soul draws you a card every turn, and then if you activate this while it's linked to Pit Knight early because they point at each other, you can then at that point freely blank an effect monster your opponent controls and make its attack 0. No effect, no attack. Very solid, but it's kind of awkward because although it's very easy to summon Pit Knight early with it being 2 effect monsters, Heat Soul needs 2 Cybers monsters with different attributes, and that's where it kind of becomes like, are you really going to go with like Aurum and Link Spider? Like you can do it, but it's kind of specific. You may want to consider building your extra deck a specific way in order to make this a bit more viable. It's good. I just didn't want to approach it. It was a bit too complicated for this kind of first round testing phase here. And definitely with their arrows, you're probably not going to be building with Tri-Gate Wizard if that happens. I hate Floodgates, but there can be only one. Could potentially fit if you really want to be a Floodgate player. You can do it because most of the plays in this deck won't be affected by this. There will be some lines you have to cut out with this, but depends on the situation, right? Maybe you're playing in an environment where this Floodgate is going to win you games and it's worth looking into. Just wanted to mention it in case. Saravis is funny because as a light monster with everything else that you will not match, like level 7 dragon, 26, 28 stat line, this is something you can small world off of any of your light monsters and it protects you from targeting effects. So it's kind of like this, but you don't even have to set up anything. You can literally just protect yourself from effect failure or infinite impermanence early on in your combo. So it's worth considering. And this is kind of another placeholder to remind you, hey, play whatever monster you want as a tech option. You probably have something in this deck because you have all the attributes and levels and all that kind of stuff. So small world is fantastic. And then last thing I wanted to mention is Rescue Ferret. I totally forgot about this, but I did play this a few years back. Basically, you can play this and maybe emergency rescue. And if you decide to do that, this thing can cheat out up to 3 monsters, usually under Saryuja or possibly under Apollosa, I suppose, but usually under Saryuja. It's a lot more accessible now because Small World exists in this deck. Ironically, you can use Herald of the Orange Light because that has 300 attack and nothing else is consistent between these 2 cards. That just goes to show you could potentially go and search this thing even more easily than before. You don't even have to play emergency rescue anymore. Play some bridge in there. Maybe it could be worth it. That's the last of my ideas here. I think I've rambled on long enough about this, but it was a lot of fun coming back to this deck after all this time. And again, the whole point of this is not to polish anything. This is literally what I played on my dining room table the other day just for fun. I had a blast with it, so hopefully you guys liked this kind of reminiscing opportunity. Look back at a different form of Yu-Gi-Oh with updated cards. And, you know, if you currently play World Chalice or you want to try this deck out, feel free to let me know any of your thoughts, ideas down below. It'd be cool to see if we can go ahead and, you know, improve this deck any further. But I also figured that this would be a fun way to go and explore a bunch of themes without committing very heavily to like making a proper let's build or in-depth introduction to a theme. So that's basically gonna do that for now. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming. Hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.